Welcome back to the Layman's Law School. Today we're going to talk about a Hollywood star who lives actually close to us, just down the road in the Atlanta area, who got into a little bit of trouble because his guard dogs were roaming free in an upscale neighborhood, and they ended up killing a neighbor's beloved pet in their own driveway.
Really sad.
So I guess his dogs were a little too fast and furious.
Gosh,
Yeah.
So can you guess which star we're going to talk about? It's actually Tyrese Gibson, who is most known now. He started out his career as a model, but then of course became famous because of the Fast and Furious movie franchise.
He also had an R&B career.
The eternal,
short-lived. Yep.
the eternal Fast and Furious.
Are you a fan of the movies?
Well, Lindsey brought this topic to our attention, and
My husband's a huge fan.
I told her that, just this week on, I don't know, I think Paramount, which shows a lot of movies when they're not showing, new episodes of whatever.
Yeah.
Not sitcoms.
CSI.
Yeah. Every night this week, I've seen that there's been Fast and Furious on, and I did not know that there's, 14, or a baker's dozen
10.
Fast and Furious.
10,
I think,
right?
when I was
a
a
lot.
much younger person, I probably saw maybe Fast and Furious 1, Fast and Furious 2 with Paul Walker in it.
I'll give it to him.
And
They're
that's
still
about
doing
it.
pretty
I had
good.
no idea that there was, years worth. It makes me think, what everybody thought Star Wars was good, and how many of those were there?
Not as many as there are Fast
Exactly.
and Furious.
Yeah.
Well-
I didn't really pay attention into it until Gal Gadot got on there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I started,
She's a
it's like,
hottie.
oh, what is this? What is this? What is this
Who was
movie?
that?
I think
Gal Gadot.
Gal Gadot?
Gal Gadot.
Gal Gadot.
She's
Gal
the,
Gadot.
she's the woman that plays
She's not
Wonder
blonde,
Woman.
so you probably don't pay
She's
attention
an
to her.
Israeli
but
actress.
I'll show you a
Quite
picture
attractive.
in a little bit.
But she's not blonde, so...
Exactly.
I mean, I
Out of here.
don't discriminate. I just have a preference for blondes.
Yeah, she's a hot brunette and she's got an accent. So she's Wonder Woman. She plays Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
No? Okay.
No. Well, we forgot.
I thought that
Oh,
was.
yeah.
I thought that was
Happy
Michelle.
Friday.
Happy
You
I thought
Friday.
that was Michelle Pfeiffer who played Wonder
Cheers.
Woman.
Oh, was
No.
she back in the day?
No.
I'm talking about
Never.
the recent Wonder Woman.
Mm-hmm.
So, by the end of this episode, what we're hoping that everybody's going to learn is that even though we're going to talk about Tyrese, which as soon as you said he was an R&B, short-lived R&B, all I could think was "Sweet Lady."
All I can think
Like,
about
that's
is
that song
who
he
let
had?
the
I have no
dogs
idea.
out. Who?
Well, if somebody's a Tyrese fan from back in the day, they'll remember that song "Sweet Lady." That he was. Oh yeah, that was a good one. A little slow jam.
You got me.
Oh, it's okay. It wasn't that great a song. But we hope by the end of this episode that you guys are going to understand when pet owners can face criminal charges for your animal's actions, what strict liability really means, and how one tragic incident reveals the legal responsibilities that come with owning powerful dogs. So this case, we'll start out with the facts. The state of Georgia versus Tyrese Gibson for an animal cruelty warrant that was served in 2024. And so, on Tilly's birthday, my daughter's birthday, September the 18th. So we were in Disney World when this happened, as a matter of fact, to this poor
When
dog.
are you not in Disney World?
Well, I'm going back in February.
Of course you
gosh.
are.
But-
I mean, it's when Lindsay started working for us, she said, well, I go to Gulf Shores once a year. That's kind of my vacation.
That's
and we were
family
like,
vacation.
We were like, okay, that's fine. And then as it moved on, there's a Disney trip twice a year, Gulf Shores once or twice a year.
But
She's got unlimited PTO.
do I get my work done?
Oh, my gosh.
for
Does
sure.
she get her work done?
Right. So that's all that matters, I feel
That's right.
like.
You're doing great.
So back to the story. Harrison Parker let his 5-year-old Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, Henry, out in his Buckhead, Atlanta front yard.
Which is kind of a little dog, right?
Yeah. So King Charleses are probably like medium size. So they're not like
30
teacup
pounds
poodles,
or
but-
so.
Yeah.
Less, yeah.
Yeah, 30 to 40 pounds. Probably 40 would be on the
High
larger
side.
end. Yeah. So 5 minutes later, he found Henry dead in the driveway with broken ribs, puncture wounds, and severe internal bleeding and covered in slobber. So a neighbor's ring camera, I know, poor dog. So a neighbor's ring camera actually showed 4 massive Cane Corso dogs, each over 100 pounds, running through the neighborhood moments before the attack. And those dogs actually belonged to Tyrese Gibson. So the same night at 11:30 p.m., another neighbor called 911 because his 4 dogs were blocking her front door and she couldn't reach her car. Animal control escorted her to safety and issued Gibson a warning for his dogs running loose. So this police investigation revealed that this is at least the 5th time in 5 months that his dogs have been reported for roaming free, and he'd received a written warning just 11 days earlier on September the 7th. So on September 22nd, 2024, Animal Control returns to get Gibson to surrender the dogs, and he admits over the phone, because he was not at home at the time, that's what I'm understanding, that he believes his dogs killed Henry and knows it's been an ongoing issue, but he refused to surrender them and asked for 3 to 4 days to figure it out. So what happened is they execute a search warrant and find that both Gibson and all his dogs are gone. So an arrest warrant for animal cruelty was issued. Gibson posted on social media that he was taking a mental health break through November and was in Los Angeles mourning his father's death. So the kicker was that investigators found a YouTube video of Gibson proudly showing off his Cane Corsos, telling them, anybody comes in this house, I want you to bite their ankles off. He probably didn't get the memo from his lawyer to not post things on social media.
That's right. Yeah.
He's got a problem for sure.
Yeah, so let's talk about the law when it comes down to this type of thing, because we have dog bite cases,
Sure.
right? Have we ever had a case where it resulted in an animal killing another animal in that sense? I feel like we deal a lot more with probably, like,
typically not.
Typically not, simply because it has to do with damages.
Yeah.
And when you have an animal that has been, at least in the state of Georgia, that has been killed, it really comes down to like the fair market value of that animal. There's some other cases that have come out recently that try to take into consideration a little bit, but like the companionship aspect, but for the most part, that doesn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah,
it's like
it's considered property damage.
Yeah, it's property. It's just like your car.
Right.
You got this King Charles, and you paid $680 for it from a breeder.
That's what you get.
That's what you get, $680.
Well,
so we wouldn't get involved in that. We would refer to them to, have their own civil suit in a small claims court.
Yeah.
Give them some good advice on how to proceed with that and let them go about that, because it wouldn't be economically feasible for us or the client to take that kind of case for them.
Yeah, because my thought is when it comes to like the companionship like aspect of it, that's relative. Like,
right.
How are you going to prove
Some
that?
people love their dogs, some people don't care.
Yeah, how are you going to prove that I love my dog Bama more than like you love your cats?
Yeah,
right?
because
like,
that's one of the ways that it's really difficult, and one of the reasons we have the law. You can't really litigate that type of thing.
No. Also,
it's really,
if somebody killed Bama, we found him in a parking lot like when he was a baby. Like, he's just a mixed breed throwaway dog. He's not worth anything.
Right.
In the eyes of the law.
Right.
Bless his heart.
Unfortunately, that's the case. But in this particular case, not only is he going to be likely civilly liable, he's going to be criminally liable. Because in the state of Georgia, you can get charged with animal cruelty under these circumstances when your animal, due to your neglect, due to your knowledge of an issue. In this particular case, he had knowledge just because he had 5 other times in which his dogs got out. He knew that there was an issue with them getting out. He knew that they had dangerous propensities, just because I think that it doesn't turn on whether or not the breed is vicious or the breed is dangerous or big or anything like that.
Pretty sure the Cane Corso would fall under a vicious breed, but
right. Yeah. Well, in most people's eyes, and apparently in his eyes because of his. And I think that's why it's so important that he had that YouTube video for the police if they're going to charge him with this. Is that he was basically wanted everybody to stay out of his home because he had these big dogs, and apparently he had more than 10. In the state of Georgia, you're required to have a particular permit or license to have that many animals. And so in this particular case, he knew of the issue, he had notice of it, and he neglected to actually deal with the issue of the dogs actually getting out. And him not being there doesn't matter. If it's deemed that he's let these dogs out, he knows that they were potentially vicious, then he's going to be held responsible.
Well, let's just talk about it in terms of, we talked that, it's another dog that was killed and there's not really any recovery. Mm-hmm. The cases that we deal with are people being bit. Yeah. Children, adults, being bit. And Georgia and South Carolina kind of have a different viewpoint on how, where we practice, how there's civil liability in that. Mm-hmm. In Georgia, there's kind of really two ways that you can get somebody civilly responsible for your damages.
Okay.
Number one would be that, the dog had prior aggression issues, had bit somebody before, and then someone, comes on your property and gets bit again.
Yep.
Well, then you've got notice and knowledge that the dog has, aggressive behavior, a prior bite type like that.
Yep.
If you don't have that, you invite me to your home. You live in Georgia.
Your dog's
You've
never
got a
bitten,
lab that's never bit anybody in their life, and I walk in the door and the dog comes up and bites me. You're not civilly responsible for that. Is it the right thing for you to do? Maybe to pay for my medical bills. But if I was to sue you legally, and that's all that we have, they would say, well, you were in this person's home. You weren't a trespasser, but there's no advanced knowledge of this dog's propensity to be vicious. The other way that you could go about it would be if there was any type of violation of a law. Or a statute or an ordinance. Most of the cases that we are involved with have to do with that, because there's in at least in all the counties that we're aware of in Georgia, there's leash laws. You have to keep the dog on your property. If it's off your property, it has to be on a leash, being held by an adult that's capable of handling that dog. And it's the dogs like Tyrese Gibson that get off the property in some way through negligence and go and wreak havoc and bite somebody. So if there is a violation of a statute or ordinance, then you can show liability there. And most of the cases usually fall into that category, that somebody let their dog out, it jumped the fence, it dug underneath the fence, it went out and wreaked some havoc out there and bit somebody. The other ones that we have are people that actually get bit on people's property when they're invited to that property.
Right.
And that comes down to more of, do they have knowledge of this dog's activities? We've had ones, before that, as soon as we talk to them, they say, well, the neighbor said that this dog's bit 2 or 3 other people. And we have to do open records requests. Usually there's some type of sheriff's office report or animal control report about a prior bite. And then you kind of have something to, sink your teeth into, for lack of a better word, no pun intended or intended. To say that you had notice and knowledge of this dog's propensity to be vicious or violent, and you still allowed my child around it, and my child got bit, and now you're responsible type thing. And then in South Carolina, it's different, though.
Yeah, you have strict liability, which means that if your dog bites somebody, that's it.
You got to pay for it.
You got to pay for it, right. So you're deemed to have control of your animal at all times, and if your animal goes out and wreaks havoc on, a person, bites another animal, you're responsible for the damages in that particular case.
So let me ask you this. So the Cane Corso dog breed is actually, they're known for being guard dogs. Does a breed of a dog, like for that case, they're known for being a guard dog. I'm not saying that's what they're always used for, but does that change the legal responsibility, or it's kind of like, no, a dog is a dog is a dog.
Yeah, no.
If it does this action, then it doesn't matter what kind of dog it is.
It's basically a factor that's considered. When it comes down to negligence, it's all about what a reasonable person would do under the circumstances. And in this particular case, I think everybody knows that a 100-pound plus dog could be a dangerous animal to other animals, to other people.
To people, yeah.
All that. So, and his video basically bragging about the fact that his house is really protected and that these animals, are going to bite, would bite somebody's ankles off, or he wants them to, is not helpful when it comes to his case for negligence. And it's not helpful when it comes to his criminal liability as well, just because, he's being charged with animal cruelty in this particular case. And that doesn't actually relate only to your animal.
Could be someone else's that you allowed your animals to hurt.
Yeah, I was going to ask that, because I feel like if you say animal cruelty and we're talking about dogs that are, aggressive dogs, et cetera, the first thing that people think of is what?
Beating your dog or...
Pit bull.
Correct. They think of pit bulls. Well, yeah. And that kind of thing of like Michael Vick, like that was a huge story, right?
Of course.
So I think people immediately go there and think, oh, wait. And so for somebody like Tyrese Gibson, I mean, that kind of... it sucks a little bit for him, only because like it sounds like he didn't, he's not abusing his dogs, although I'm not justifying what his dogs did, but I feel like in his case, it sucks a little bit because people are definitely using preconceived notions of what they think animal cruelty is in this case, and probably prejudging a little bit without really knowing the facts, which is the whole reason we're talking about it. Yeah. Right. So what does this mean for like the average person?
So you can be criminally, right? You can be criminally and civilly held liable for the injuries to animals, to people that are caused by your dog if you fail to control it. Now, like I said, in the state of Georgia, you have to have some sort of knowledge of the dog's propensity to be vicious, or as Shawn said, have broken some sort of statute.
Yep.
With regard to the dog. But your dog, even, if it causes the death or unjustifiable injury and pain and suffering for another animal, another person, then you can be held responsible, not only civilly to pay for whatever damages, but also criminally. That is actually considered animal cruelty, and that's how it sort of raised its head in this particular case, in that he neglected his own dogs and them being contained. And he knew about their propensity to get out. He knew that in at least one prior case, the dogs had kept a woman from her house being able to access her car. She couldn't get to her car, and the police came to be able to escort her out of her home. And under those circumstances, your neglect and actually keeping your dogs in can result, like in this case, in a criminal charge as well as civil liability.
All right, let me ask you this hypothetical question.
All right.
If that was the very first time his dogs had ever gotten out, he had not received any warnings at all because it was the first time. And the first time they got out, maybe he wasn't home, right? But he didn't even know that the faulty fence, whatever. But it's his property. I get it. I'm learning a little bit where I'm like already catching myself. I can't even finish my question. So I'm like, I already know that this is what would get him. But what if the very first time that they got out, they went and killed this neighbor's dog, and there was no, like we're saying, there was no previous.
I would say that.
Does that change this
I would
case?
say that there would be, it's all has to do with the totality of the circumstances, and that's hypothetical with everything else, being eliminated. I would say that he wouldn't have any civil liability.
Okay.
Absent the fact that his dogs have violated a statute.
Right. Okay.
I mean, it's not a statute where you have to intend for your dogs to get off of the property. It's just the fact that your dogs were off of the property. They weren't on a leash, so you violated a statute. So on the first prong of notice, knowledge of viciousness, et cetera, you don't have that, but you would still be able to show that and get civil liability by saying that your dogs were still in violation of the statute because you failed to keep them on the property. Criminally might be, different. I don't know about a state charge, for that particular crime, an animal cruelty charge, but every county, at least in the state of Georgia, has ordinances about keeping your dog, and it would be, failure to maintain your dogs on your property type thing. I think it just goes down to if you take on the responsibility, whether it be of having a child or having an animal, you need to take on that responsibility. You need to make sure that you're keeping everyone safe, that you're obeying the law, that you're keeping your animals on your property. It's like if it was legal to own an elephant in Georgia, well, if you're going to buy an elephant...
Roll Tide.
Let's not get into that. Go dogs. If you were to buy an elephant and the law was you had to keep the elephant on your property, well, you don't just say, well, I've got enough money to buy an elephant. No. It's, I've got enough money to buy an elephant, or somebody's giving me an elephant, but I also can build this, concrete barrier around my entire property to keep my elephant on it, and I'm going to be able to feed it properly, and I'm going to be able to take care of it and afford the vet bills for it. Right. The same type thing is if you live in a house and you don't have a fence,
You probably shouldn't get a dog.
If you get a dog, you better plan on every time you let that dog out.
It's on a leash.
It's on a leash and you're walking around type thing. Not just, oh, I let the dog out in the morning. Sometimes it stays on my property. Sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
It's personal responsibility is what it all comes down to.
Yeah. And I asked that question about like it being the first time because I do feel like that's something more common that would happen to like the average person in that, oh no, like there was a storm last night and the fence went down. I let the dog out and maybe, because maybe you keep your dog indoors because you know that like it's not socialized like with other dogs or with people. And so, and like, my dog Bama, for instance, like he's not aggressive, but he's also like, he's an indoor dog. Like he stays at home. He's old and grumpy and he likes to be at home. Does he tolerate us? Yes. Does he tolerate my 4-year-old? Sure. But do I keep him, whenever he goes in the backyard, he has a fenced in yard. And I swear to you, every time I go to let him out, I look and make sure the gate is closed. And it's because one time somebody was doing our lawn or whatever, and the back gate was open. And what happened? Bama went straight out of it, and he's running around. And then I don't know. I don't think he's going to go attack anybody. But at the same time, I don't know what Bama's going to do because Bama's not normally out in the open, right?
Not Bama's environment.
Right. And so Bama could act aggressively, having no previous whatever, because he's afraid, if anything else. And so... Well,
you live in South Carolina, and you would be strictly liable for the injuries and damages that occur.
Yeah. So I think, for practical takeaways or like what this means, for the average person, from what you guys are saying is like, especially if you live in Georgia or South Carolina, you got two very different, ways that this can be looked at. And, I live in South Carolina. And so that was new knowledge to me in the difference. And so that's good for me to learn. But I think some warning signs or red flags for you, like if you are a dog owner and your neighbors are complaining about your pets roaming free, like do something about it.
That's right.
Like I think Shawn makes an excellent point that like if you're going to be responsible for the animal, then be responsible for the animal because something could happen that puts you in a lot deeper trouble that you don't even realize what happened. Or I think for, in Tyrese Gibson's case, clearly he was, told what he needed to do and he disregarded these warnings and something much worse happened. And let's be honest, it could have been a toddler that these dogs attacked, and of course that's where my brain goes because I have a toddler. But, if they're going to attack a small dog like that with no, what would stop it from a person? And so,
and this is just a misdemeanor charge, man. It's punishable by 1 year in prison or $1,000 fine, but you can actually be charged if there's shown some serious recklessness with a felony, and especially if there's intent. There's a show I've watched on TV where they follow around the dog catchers of a particular county, and there's a woman that didn't want her dog taken, but the dog had already bitten a number of people. They were going to take the dog and put it down, and the woman says, "You want him? You got him," and opened the door and let the dog out, and he mangled the hand of this dog catcher. And in that particular case, that woman would be charged with a felony because she had the intent to let what she knew to be a vicious animal that had bitten other people out to actually harm this person. And that's this distinction between whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony.
Yeah. So the key takeaway, your responsibility for your pet doesn't end at your property line, and the I wasn't home, that's not a legal defense either when you've been repeatedly warned that your animals are dangerous.
So what you're saying is it doesn't matter who let the dogs out.
Exactly. Don't you love how that came full circle? Well, we appreciate you guys watching and listening. You've changed up the format a little bit going into a new season. And so we want to hear from you in the comments. If there's some topics that you'd like us to cover, now that you've seen the format in a couple episodes, we want to see what you want to hear. And so let us know also what you think of the new format. Do you like us kind of going back a little old school? When the podcast first started, we were doing a lot more of like the defining the terms. And so we wanted to kind of pay homage to that a little bit in this new season. So thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed and turn on your notifications to be notified when new videos come out.